right, so it is 2 o'clock and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today and welcome to week 7 of Virtual30, our live event series happening every Tuesday at 2. I hope everybody had a nice, relaxing, and safe Memorial Day weekend. Today is May 26th and our topic is computer vision for social distancing and contact tracing. We have 2 panelists today. We have Alex representing the Canadian Artificial Intelligence Association, and we have Conrad representing the AI Innovation Consortium. So we can go ahead and get started. Let's see. Before we begin, I wanted to share our working from home picture of the week. It's a little different than we've done in the past. We decided to share just a funny comic that we thought made sense for appropriate times for now. If you could see the top image, it just shows a guy at his computer thinking, I wish I were home and away from all these crazy people, back in February as he's in the office with his coworkers. And then by March, he's wishing that he were back in the office away from these crazy people, referring to his kids. So we just thought it was funny, as many of us have had to work from home for many weeks now and had to adjust to different environments and different people. So hopefully you all have been surviving. I know it's been a long time, so we hope everyone can get back to the office soon and safely. All right, oops. Real quick, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Brianna Colder, and I'm the Corporate Project and Event Coordinator for Vsoft Consulting, as well as the moderator for the Virtual30 series. So I've been doing this for 7 weeks now, and excited to have more people joining each and every week. Today I mentioned we have Alex and Conrad, so I will let them go ahead and introduce themselves. Alex, if you wouldn't mind going first, just saying your name and a little blurb about what you do.
Yeah, hi, thanks Brianna. So my name is Alex. I'm from the Canadian Artificial Intelligence Association. I work up here in Canada, in Montreal, Quebec, on AI initiatives. And I've been previously the CTO and CIO of several retailers up in Canada.
Awesome. And Conrad, if you can go ahead and go next, introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us again. My name is Conrad Konarski. I am the chairman of the AI Innovation Consortium. I also work as the head for Vsoft, so I look forward to an interesting and very applicable discussion on computer vision today.
Perfect. All right, so today our panelists are going to discuss computer vision and its use for social distancing, some alternative technologies for social distancing, and then efforts organizations are making to support health and safety initiatives, which we all know is a hot topic, as many of us will be heading back to the office in the coming weeks. And as always, we have a Q&A with our panelists following the presentation. So if you come up with any questions along the way, just drop them in the Q&A box below and we'll be sure to get them answered. So with that said, we can go ahead and begin. Our first question for the panelists: what is computer vision? Conrad or Alex,
so
feel free to take
I think I'll start here just to give everyone kind of a holistic view of this. Probably for most of you, you already know this answer, but let us talk to this anyway, at least from our perspective. So computer vision and artificial intelligence powered computer vision is basically the ability to interpret information from images or video. I think this picture reflects some of that. This is probably something that was pulled from an autonomous car video feed that is looking to identify all the objects, all the relevant obstacles, if you will, for an autonomous car, and then make decisions based on that ability to interpret what these objects are, right? So you see here people, cars, traffic lights, and so on. It is basically a way to process and extract metadata and object information on any information feed that's video or image-based, and it uses neural networks. Neural networks are kind of the foundation for a lot of the artificial intelligence that you hear of today. So that's what we're going to cover, and I think we'll cover it in a very interesting context here with the COVID-19 application.
All right, now we'll be touching on computer vision and how it supports social distancing.
I do like that handshake.
That's what we got to do nowadays.
It's going to disappear very soon, though.
Speaks a lot to what we have to deal with today. You know, and computer vision, if in the context of these 3 topics, is interesting because I think a lot of organizations have been developing computer vision systems to support analytics extraction from computer vision feeds, so consumer behavior, personal protective equipment monitoring, if people are wearing their correct equipment and so on.
Mhm.
And this takes on a new shape or somewhat of a similar shape, but in a new application case, which is this COVID-19 response. So those computer vision algorithms that were once used to understand how, let's say, someone moves through an environment to optimize operational efficiency can now be used to monitor social distancing, can now be used to identify and monitor actively how much time someone is interacting with somebody else, can now be used to support some retroactive contact tracing. So those are the three core topics we'll cover. I'd like to jump to the next slide because I think it speaks to kind of the breakdown of these three topics in more detail. And, you know, what I'll do here, just to give Alex a chance to speak, is I'll ask him from his perspective, being up in Canada, you know, there are, of course, collective international efforts around measures that organizations and governments are taking to help mitigate the spread of COVID-19, to help support the physical distancing and social distancing. But maybe you can share with us a little bit from the Canadian perspective, what is Canada doing in sort of this discrete measure dimension to help support social distancing?
Yeah, absolutely. So up here in Canada, specifically in Montreal and Quebec, COVID-19 has taken a toll on all our infrastructure, and the government and organizations have chosen to focus really on mitigating the effects of COVID-19, specifically related to its spread. So some of the discrete measures that are being put into place relate around apps and computer vision. In the context of computer vision, to basically monitor and track how some of these measures are being upheld, if they're being respected or not at the organizational level. More so to be able to look and analyze a situation and then come up with proactive ways that we could retrain staff and rearrange spaces in order to maintain that social distancing we're all looking for, rather than try to police individuals. So that's one of the aspects that we're doing, and the other aspects deal more with apps that people carry around their phone to track, to use contact tracing applications, for example.
Let me take a stab at this also, maybe from an agnostic technology perspective, which is a rare thing, being that I'm in AI. You know, the key here, I think, is the word discrete, right? And it's specific actionable steps that need to be put in place to help not just identify that this situation is occurring, but to actually help in preventing it occurring in the future, right? So we've dealt with a lot of folks within the consortium that have come to us kind of sharing both what they're doing in terms of process changes from a continuity and health safety perspective, and specifically what they're looking to do with computer vision. And ultimately what this kind of falls back to is, you know, I want to be able to take action on when I see a social distancing violation happening, but I also want to be able to look at that holistically in my organization and then understand what do I need to do to change that from happening in the future. Because by the time I went and policed that particular activity, I use that term kind of loosely, if I wanted to do that in the first place, it's too late to prevent it from happening, right? So the distancing, the violation has already happened. So what can I do to limit exposure time? What can I do to look at where the social gatherings are happening and change that in the future? And a lot of that is about collecting information of the current circumstances. So we'll share some of that here in the presentation a little further down.
Awesome. Great insights, you two. So our next question we have is, what alternative technologies exist to support social distancing?
Okay, I'll take that to start, and then maybe ask Alex to elaborate a little bit more on some of the work that I've heard Canada is doing in the space.
Sounds good.
You know, so alternate technologies, and it could be something as simple as just simply throwing manpower and human resources to support monitoring and engaging crowds to disperse or to maintain social distancing. That's kind of the low-level mechanism. And in fact, that's still happening in many shapes and forms, either in retail or just in general in the industrial space. There are also actual technologies that are being implemented. Some of them are mobile apps. Some of them are based on IoT technologies, ultra-wideband Wi-Fi, and then of course computer vision being one of them as well. I strongly believe, and I've worked in IoT many years in the past. I've actually had a similar role in an IoT consortium, is that the reality of some of those technologies is that although they do provide a subset of what is really supporting social distancing, so they can tell you that you've come in contact with someone else, like a mobile app, right? It uses Bluetooth connection. It connects to another Bluetooth that has the same mobile app, and it tells you basically you've come in contact with this person. But those things are susceptible to bleeds through walls, right? Wireless can travel through walls. They don't give you necessarily an idea of where that actual social distancing happened. So just so you know that there's two people there that have come in contact. If you're using GPS on the phones, yeah, maybe you'll get some level of accuracy, but if you're indoors in an office environment, that becomes challenging. What floor were you on? So then all the analogous, those discrete measures we talked about that actually take that data and beyond just enforcing a social distancing or collecting a social distancing violation, take actionable steps. That's where I believe with these alternate technologies that gets lost. So I mean, maybe I'll just hand it over to Alex to talk a little bit more on the Canadian perspective and on his perspective on what other alternate technologies are being used.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it.
Cover all of them for you up front. Let us know.
No, you touched on the different points that we're tackling up here. So they're mostly centered around computer vision and mobile apps, like you mentioned. I mean, apps. It's a go-to solution using these technologies simply because of the way that it could scale across a society. But like you mentioned, it does have those limitations when it comes to indoors, inside space, GPS resolution inside doesn't give you that level of traceability that you would need to be highly accurate in doing contact tracing in a enclosed space. Again, these apps are based on just proximity alerts using the Bluetooth strength, like you mentioned. Those have issues around specific location, but computer vision, on the other hand, can actually give us a more precise look at a situation in a non-intrusive way that allows you to collect data you could then analyze, extract insights from, and make changes accordingly to help enforce and retrain some of the staff, like I mentioned earlier. So the contrast there is an important aspect that comes up between apps and computer vision in this specific scenario relates to privacy, right? Like when you're using somebody's mobile app, you can track whatever they're doing, wherever they go. So where do organizations draw that line between we need to implement these measures to keep our organization and staff safe versus we have to give our employees on our staff the privacy they need to do and go where they need to go, where they don't feel they're constantly being watched by some sort of application. So those are important things to consider along with the gap. So I think computer vision is used up here in Canada, where the big talk is related to the apps, simply because we have some of the big players like Google and the Montreal Institute for Learning Algorithms that are implementing some of these techniques on a wide scale to help a city such as Montreal, who's been hit pretty hard by COVID-19, resume and retake those activities in a way that allows the people that are healthy and safe to be able to resume their natural day, whereby they cannot then trace and impose or track certain quarantine measures or restrictions on people that they have been tested positive for COVID-19. So it allows a gradual return to normalcy, and that's where the focus has been up here for us.
Perfect. Oh, we do have this slide, and you'll want to touch on this one.
Yeah, sure. That's good, actually, because I was going to add on the IoT piece and kind of what that looks like and what the benefits of using IoT technology to support this. So, from my perspective, I see IoT to be not just sensor devices or watches like ultra-wideband watches that I'm sure some of you that have done some due diligence here in the space are being used to support social distancing, but also cameras. Cameras are an edge device with sensing technologies that passes that data to an AI algorithm, right? So although I like to consider that to be part of that IoT umbrella, traditional like IoT umbrella is, like I mentioned, these devices that are basically being used, like watches or badges, to help support social distancing. Just like I mentioned earlier, right, they're susceptible to bleeds between walls. One of the challenges I've seen, and that isn't to say that this is holistic across all IoT devices, is battery charging, right? So you have to assure that your device is now actively being recharged. If it's a mobile phone, it's using now additional power to basically process and sense the social distancing. If it's a sensing device, it's consuming battery. So there's a lot of challenges in that space. To the benefit of ultra wideband technology, it's very accurate. It does require a lot of infrastructure traditionally to get that sort of accuracy that you're looking for, right? Because you need to be able to resolve location within some degree of accuracy that gives you an ability to act to correctly mitigate and look at social distancing violations. So that is just my little anecdote from the IoT world. I think it's beneficial. I think it could be used as a complementary technology. It is obviously not cost effectively scalable if you're looking at thousands of or tens of thousands of employees. And it does come with its challenges. I will give everyone the benefit of the doubt. You know, I am in the AI world, but the practice I run is an AI IoT practice. So we've actually explored these other alternate technologies as well. And we've come to the conclusion that computer vision is the one that is both most encompassing, most cost effective, and so on. So it is, in our opinion, the technology for this sort of application case. I don't know if Alex agrees or disagrees with me, but
no, I do agree. I mean, it's when you mix in the IoT and everything into it, AI definitely has advantages over those technologies. So I think you're right when it comes to being the most comprehensive, cost-effective technology we can use to tackle some of these challenges, both in the United States and in Canada. So I think that's definitely the way to go.
Awesome. And we do have one more question for you all. How are organizations supporting health and safety initiatives?
So this I guess sort of overlaps with the other question, but maybe it's just a little bit more holistic in what we want to do to help support specifically the health of our employees, right? And you see here a few different pictures. Meat processing, I think it's some sort of warehouse, and then obviously retail space and automotive. You know, meat processing, I'll talk to that one specifically because we've done already a considerable amount of work in this space. It is inherently very dense of an activity when it comes to human interaction. There's a lot of handoff of these poultry or meat items. I guess inevitably it requires a lot of people to sit in a very close space to be able to process the meat properly, right, and package it properly. And so it is essentially a high-risk area, high-risk business for the spread of COVID-19. And so, you know, I'm sure what we've heard recently, some of you may be aware of this, is that it's a function of distance, the possibility of catching it, but also it's a function of the exposure time that you are in proximity of somebody else. And meaning, you know, basically as if I'm coronavirus positive, hypothetically, and I began breathing water particles out of my mouth, the individual that's close to me will breathe those in, but he won't or she won't necessarily get sick immediately. They have to breathe in a certain amount of those water particles with the coronavirus to get past to the level where they actually are sick, right? And that just obviously is a function of how close I am because those particles disperse over distance, and also how long I am in front of those continuously breathing water particles. And so these sort of organizations are taking initiatives to create simple solutions like the visors that you see here to try to isolate the work in process stations, and the PPE gear, which I think has already have been there since the beginning of these processing plants, just from a hygienic perspective, but also to look at those data points, the how much time someone has spent in front of someone else. Can I automate a process here where I have a person now, but I can now centralize them into an office and have the AI technology create that inspection process or that processing step automatically, right? So those are initiatives that are being looked at with a much more refined, much more assertive tone in the health and safety world to help support uh, the ability for that business to mitigate any COVID-19 spread, and also to be able to support that business to continue to operate if if there is some sort of spread on the production line. What can we do to sustain business continuity? And some of that is process changes, some of that is technology investment. So I don't know, Alex, if you want to cover another one of these, I think that would benefit us, or something separate. I know you've done a lot of work in retail. Maybe that could be a.
Yeah, I mean, up here we're working with the meat processing industries as they're tackling some of these challenges to be able to go back to their normal operations. And obviously, as you mentioned, it is a high risk environment. There is a lot of contact that happens inherently by being in these environments. So what they're looking to do is leverage something like computer vision to help make sure that their employees are following the guidelines, that they're wearing the proper protective equipment, that they're not staying in one place in a given time, that can be avoided to limit the whole exposure factor that you touched on. So these are all things that we're working with together with the AI Innovation Consortium, given the experience they've had in the US, so that we can bring some of these solutions up here to Canada and help get these companies back to full capacity as quickly as possible. So in all that, the goal, again, as I mentioned earlier, is to help mitigate the spread of the virus, contain it, and if someone does contract the COVID-19 virus, that they're able to then track it, trace it, and then take appropriate actions to prevent such things from happening in the future again. So those are the key areas that we've been working on, specifically for meat processing industry, as well as for some of the warehouse logistics training and their operations.
Awesome. Thank you both. So now we are actually going to move into our Q&A session. I did see a couple questions come in, so I'll go ahead and read them aloud so you all can answer them. The first one we have, I think this would help my organization, but we're not a huge company. How expensive is it to implement computer vision, even on a basic level?
That's a good question. I'll give you the answer that you're looking for first, and then I'll give you it depends answer after. For example, some of our participating AIC members, VSoft included, have out-of-box technology solutions that are intended on being very cost-effective. In less than $10,000, you can be up and running with a computer vision platform that gives you all the analytics and capabilities to extract insights from those analytics that give you these sort of discrete measure ability to then take action against what you're seeing in terms of social distancing violations. So in under $10,000, you are not only detecting those violations, but are able to take action against them. And then the it depends aspect of it is, of course, the size of your facility. You said you're small, so if you're under 10,000 square feet, you still fall under that under $10,000 umbrella. If you're much larger, function of that is just simply having a camera system capable of providing full coverage in the areas that you're interested in covering. And a function of that is also maybe some additional requirements you have. Either you want to be able to have certain customized reports that come out of your analytics from the vision feed, or you want to have some unique things that you're looking to detect that isn't just people, maybe some customized personal protective equipment that only your industry uses, or some sort of insights in terms of integrating the vision feed and the specific, let's say, detection of a social distance violation to some sort of alarms that are visible in the field, like a red light, green light, or something more complex. There's things that you can do with with computer vision where you can create zones, and those zones can then be attributed to hazardous areas. And if someone falls in that hazard area or goes in it, there could be other lockout, closeout activities that happen that essentially shut down whatever is operating in that zone. So there's a lot of possible integrations that you can take with this technology beyond just the core capability. But I will circle back and say, for under $10,000 with the camera system, and the platform, you can deploy a system like this within less than a week.
Perfect. And that you kind of just went into the next question. I don't know if Alex, you want to take this one. My business is planning to open its offices in June. How long would it take to implement computer vision so we can ensure social distancing protocols are being followed ASAP?
I mean, I think this follows from Conrad's answer. I think he probably covered this, but there are some out-of-the-box solutions that are really well crafted and very powerful. Again, under 10,000, you could be up and running in a week or two at the most, right, Conrad? It all depends, like Conrad was saying, on your facility, the specifics of how you want to implement this. What are you looking to accomplish? If you have specific protocols that you want in place, all those things have to be accounted for. But there are some really good solutions that that are available that can solve this specific question.
Perfect. And we have just a few minutes left, so I'll ask another one here. 10 grand in a week, done. Can my team roll this out, and where do we get the insights to build?
Okay, so yes, your team can roll it out. I guess if you have an existing camera system, then it's a function of just contacting the consortium and getting in touch with our AI computer vision team. So Brianna will share some contact details at the end of the presentation here. When it comes to the insights of how to build, maybe that's, I'm not clear yet what you mean by that, but I'll say if you mean physically installing the system, if you need to install the cameras, there is some bookkeeping work that needs to be done. So if you don't have existing cameras, then we would ask for some survey information, plan diagrams, some visuals of the environment to give you an idea where to install them. If you do have an existing camera system, then it's really a discussion that takes place with the product owner of that camera system or someone in IT that can give us an understanding of how we consume that video footage. And usually for 98% of cases, the DVRs that typically are part of this existing camera system hold camera footage, and there's a really simple way of consuming that camera footage and then feeding it into our platform. So that is really the simplicity behind the deployment. So if you have it, it's just the consumption piece. If you don't have it, then there's an installation piece. And then I'm leaving maybe one thing out, which is once the system goes live, there is the possibility to tune it further to enhance its ability to detect. And so once it goes live, part of the process is to start consuming that new camera footage, especially if it didn't exist before, and tuning the existing models that have already been built historically to optimize them for your operating environment. But all that is intended to be deployable in less than a week in most cases.
Perfect. And we did have one more, but we're actually out of time. So I'll just be sure to include it in our follow-up email. I'll ask you to, outside of this, the answer to that question, but we are almost out of time today. So just wanted to say thank you, Alex and Conrad, for joining us today. I have their emails up here, and I will also include them on the final slide and leave it up for anyone who's interested in reaching out to them directly for any further questions on computer vision. Be sure you join us next week on June 2nd. Our topic is PoE, or Power over Ethernet Lighting, which will be presented by Eric Holder, who is our Managing Director of Global IT Operations for VSoft Infrastructure. Can't believe we're going to be in June next week. But thank you all for hanging out with us. Questions or speaking inquiries, you can always reach out to me. Here's the contact information for me, for Alex, and for Conrad, and I will leave this slide up for anyone interested in jotting that down. And that is all we have today. So thank you all. Thank you, Conrad. Thank you, Alex. And everyone enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.